Hey, shalom, shalom, everyone. Coming to you from my personal home office with a book review. And then I want to talk about the book a little bit, and it's this one right here. It's As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. Highly, highly recommend. I am extremely happy I took the time to read it. Made me really appreciate the biblical wisdom behind it. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But here's what I want to talk about. I've noticed something, and you probably have too, that there are many men out there who want better outcomes without better habits. They want relief without responsibility. And they don't understand why nothing changes. You know, a man will pray for change, he'll pray for hope, he'll pray for relief, and then he'll wait for the momentum to happen. But he'll never take the time to correct the pattern that created the problem. I don't think that's just modern psychology. I think it's biblical. And James Allen wrote this book more than 100 years ago. But it still cuts through modern excuses. And I don't think that flatters us very well. It tells us the truth. And this book is public domain, which means I can quote it plainly. And I'm going to do that because I don't think soft paraphrases will do it justice. And so what Allen observed philosophically, Scripture already established spiritually. You know, the Bible states the principle plainly in Proverbs 23, verse 7, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. That's not as he wishes, so is he, or as he claims, so is he. It's as he thinks, and therefore that's how he lives. Let's go through some examples from Allen's writings. Allen says, here is a man who is wretchedly poor. He's extremely anxious that his surroundings and home comfort should be improved, yet all the time he shirks his work and considers that he's justified in trying to deceive his employer on the ground of insufficiency of his wages. Such a man does not understand the simplest rudiments of those principles, which are the basis of true prosperity, and is not only totally unfitted to rise out of his wretchedness, but is actually attracting to himself a still deeper wretchedness by dwelling in and acting out indolent, deceptive, and unmanly thoughts. So did you notice what Allen didn't say? He did not say that the man was unlucky. He didn't say that the system failed him. He said that the man was acting out indolent, deceptive, and unmanly thoughts. And those thoughts were shaping his future. And Scripture confronts that same sort of man in Proverbs chapter 10, verse 4. It says, a slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. Notice poverty here isn't framed as fate. It's kind of framed as formation. You know, he caused it. Dishonesty, laziness, self-justification. Those things don't just delay prosperity. They actively train a man away from it. Let's take another look. Let's take a look at another example. In this example, Allen writes, here is a rich man who is the victim of a painful and persistent disease as the result of gluttony. He is willing to give large sums of money to get rid of it, but he will not sacrifice his gluttonous desires. He wants to gratify his taste for rich and unnatural viands and have his health as well. Such a man is totally unfit to have health because he has not yet learned the first principles of a healthy life. Wow. I almost don't know what to say about that. This is a man who wants the benefits of health without the cost of discipline. He wants the outcome without sacrifice. Money can't save a man from the habits he refuses to surrender. I think the Bible addresses this directly also in Galatians chapter 6, verse 7. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. You cannot sow indulgence and then reap health. You can't plant excess and then harvest strength. And money will not redeem a man from appetites that he refuses to govern, right? Let's take a look at one more from Allen. Allen says, here's an employer of labor who adopts crooked measures to avoid paying the regulation wage, and in the hope of making larger profits, reduces the wages of his workpeople. Such a man is altogether unfitted for prosperity, and when he finds himself bankrupt, both as regards reputation and riches, he blames circumstances, not knowing that he is the sole author of his condition. Now, once again, I think scripture here leaves no room for confusion. James 5:4 says, behold, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, are crying out against you. And so when the collapse came, this man blamed circumstances. But Allen says something that most men don't want to hear. He says, you are the author of your condition. And scripture says, heaven is paying attention to that. I've got one more case that I want to read to you. This is not from Allen's book. This one is an actual person that I'm very familiar with and have been doing the best I can to encourage. Let's take a look at this one. Here is a man who is not lazy. He is not dishonest, and he is not indulgent. He is overwhelmed. His adult daughter is dying, not from an accident, but from years of destructive choices. He's raised her children as his own for over a decade. His wife suffers from chronic illness and requires constant care, and his own body carries the cost of service and sacrifice. And despite efforts and loyalty at work, advancement has passed him by. You know, this man doesn't wake up seeking comfort. He wakes up exhausted. And over time, for him, the weight became so constant that he can no longer see beyond it. And not because he lacks character. I can personally vouch for his character. It's impeccable. But because I think unexamined suffering narrows a man's vision until all he can see is the pain in front of him. It's hard to get out of that. And this man didn't create all of this circumstance. But if he isn't careful, those circumstances are going to continue to shape his thinking. And maybe he's past the point, but I'm going to continue to try with him, you know. And in his thinking is going to quietly decide his future. That's what I think. But I think also scripture speaks to him too, you know. Proverbs 4:23 says, keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. Even under pressure, or even under grief, or under fatigue, you keep your heart with all vigilance. Pain explains paralysis, but it doesn't justify surrender. He's still got responsibilities. Well, here's the principle behind all four of these cases, Watchmen, and it's uncomfortable because it's true. You cannot aim at a good or righteous end while you're encouraging thoughts and habits and behaviors that oppose it. You cannot want financial stability while you're avoiding honest labor. And you cannot want strength while you're indulging in weakness. You cannot want peace while you're feeding disorder. It's not mystical, but it is practical. Your thoughts become decisions, and your decisions become habits, and your habits become character, and character builds your circumstances. And I think philosophy and scripture agree on this point. James 1:8 says, James 1:8 calls the man who wants one thing but practices another double-minded, unstable in all his ways. Men don't fail because they don't want good outcomes. They fail because they refuse to confront and correct the thoughts and habits that work against the very life they claim to want. Here's a call to action. Scripture never commands instant transformation, but it does command obedience, one step at a time. Proverbs 4:26 says, "Ponder the path of your feet, then all your ways will be sure." So this week, over the weekend, and starting this week, I want you to identify one misaligned thought and correct it with one disciplined action. And do that once a day. Do it daily. Circumstances aren't random, they're trained. And when thoughts, habits, and standards finally align, change is no longer mysterious. This is the work of disciplined men. This is the work of a watchman. One habit a day. Always forward.